What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. I'm making another tier list. Today we are making a tier list of the Vivid Voltage VMAX and V Pokemon. We'll be including all of the VMAXs and then all of the Vs that do not evolve into a VMAX. Since there's only 6 VMAXs, I figure that's barely even a tier list. That's like one card per each tier, so we'll throw in the Vs that don't have a VMAX to evolve into as well and talk about those. Before we do that, shout out to PotonStore.com, the best place for you to get ptcgo codes. Use code Celio for 5% off. Vivid Voltage is coming out on ptcgo on November 12th, 1 p.m. Eastern, and then you can buy it with coins on ptcgo on November 13th, 1 p.m. Eastern. So you can use codes on the 12th, coins on the 13th. The official release date for the set is the 13th, which is just a week away now. So let's talk about these cards in terms of their competitive viability in the North American standard format. We'll start with the Vs. Let's start all the way back here with Mr. Steelix V. So Steelix V, 250 HP, Raging Hammer, does 30 plus 10 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon, Metal colorless, then Iron Tackle for 5 energy, does 210. It does have 250 HP. For retreat cost, so buff padding works with it, metal, so the new metal coating works with it, Luke Metal GX works with it. So I think you could do something fun with Steelix, and I'll probably do something fun on YouTube with it, but I think it's a pretty bad card in terms of competitive viability. I wouldn't really expect it to show up too much at the moment, because I think your better tanking options are just Zamazenta and Zacian and Luke Metal, but we'll have to see. I'm definitely going to try it out for fun, and we'll see if anything comes out of it. So I will put it in C. Should it be nice to Steelix? Let's theory for a moment. So 250 HP, you give it a buff padding, that's 300 HP. After Luke Metal, it takes 30 less damage. So let's say nothing's ever one-shotting it. So if somebody hits it with a one-shot, typically one-shotting of the attack, so let's say you get Brave Bladed for 200, after the resistance from Luke Metal, Raging Hammer would knock out that Zacian, but then you're back to square one, kind of, because then the next Pokemon comes in and knocks you out, and then you don't have a Steelix with damage ready to trade back. And so in theory, it doesn't sound like the worst card ever, since it does have other cards carrying it. So we'll put it in C. We'll put it in C tier because it has the metal support carrying it, and like just the tanky Pokemon support carrying it. So you have buff padding, you have Luke Metal, you have metal coating energy. So it's like borderline a playable card, so I'll put it in C. Next is Drapion, which is just absolutely horrendous. 210 HP, has Rack Down, not Whack, not Rack with an R in front of it, Rack Down with a W. 70 damage, and then Hazardous Claws, 130, discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed and poisoned. Okay, so there have been formats where paralyzation, you know what, I've heard other YouTubers say paralyzation as well. You must just get in the moment and think that that's a word. So there's been a time when paralysis was a very strong special condition, but we have like Force Switch in so many decks. We even have Bird Keeper floating around sometimes, Malolana and Tag Call decks. You know, just evolve the V Pokemon. So paralysis is not as strong as it once was, and for 4 energy in this format, you gotta be like knocking out the Pokemon or something, or setting up something really crazy for later on, and here you're even going down 2 energy, so this is just really, really bad. This goes in the bottom tier. I don't have an F tier, but this will go in D. So Sirfetch'd came out as a promo prior to this set, but it technically is in this set, and its full art looks amazing. All of the full arts look amazing. This set is a great collector set. So Galarian Sirfetch'd V, 210 HP, fighting type. Fighting gets stone energy in this set. Fighting still has martial arts dojo in standard format. Still has Karate Belt, so ability, when this Pokemon moves from your bench to active, you can move fighting energy from other Pokemon to it, and then you do 200. That could be 240 with Martial Arts Dojo to knock out a Zacian, to knock out a Zamazenta, and maybe a matchup where Zamazenta's bothering you per se if you are playing Coalossal. So yeah, Galarian Sirfetch'd is a pretty good card. I don't think it's I think with Coalossal and Stone Energy being released and Martial Arts Dojo still being in format and Karate Bell still being in format, we'll throw it up into B tier. Definitely better than Steelix, way better than Drapion. Next is Alakazam, and look at what they've done to my boy. So Alakazam, beautiful art, horrible attacks, 190 HP, pretty weak. Zen Spoon, put 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon any way you like. Okay, great. We have Psy Power that's on Bench Barrier Mew. And then Mind Ruler, 30 damage for each card in your opponent's hand. Like, what were they thinking? Like, this is just absolute garbage. Just unplayable, absolutely unplayable. So that goes right into the bottom tier. Next is Ampharos. Beautiful looking Ampharos. I know it's Ampharos, guys, calm down. I need to have a little fun. Okay, so Ampharos V, 210 HP, lightning type, Dazzle Blast 50. They're confused, we'll just look over that. Then the main attack is damaging Spark, 120 damage, and then 30 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. Not entirely great, but I will say it's better than Drapion and Alakazam, so it will go here. I will probably try to play something with it for fun because I like Ampharos and I like spread mechanics, and I like seeing Pokemon that have done spread mechanics in the past. They keep that flavor, and Ampharos has been a damage spread Pokemon in the past. Next is Talonflamme V. Another stunning art. But we're not here to talk about the art today. No siree, Bob. We're here to talk about their competitive viability in the team up through Vivid Voltage standard format. So Talonflame V is coming in at 190 HP fire Pokemon, and it has fast flight. If you go first, you can use this attack during your first turn, discard your hand and draw 6 cards. We need more Pokemon that have abilities and attacks and effects like this, and this is actually good. They also have Beauty in this set, which is a supporter. If you go first, you may play this card during your first turn, draw 2 cards. This is absolute garbage. Like, use this to prop up a table leg that's a little short. But Talonflame V is actually, like, playable. I still think Zacian V is just always better because you can Intrepid Sword and end your turn, draw 3, and you can do that all the time. This is your attack, so after turn 1, you would have to use this as your attack, so Talonflame has to be in the active. You had to have your energy on it. That being said, Talonflame V does have free retreat. In something like Baby Blacephalon, you don't mind attaching an energy to Talonflame V turn 1 because next turn you just go attach and then Welder to Baby Blown. And then also it has a workable attack, 160 for 3 energy, so it's not the best, but it can knock out a fire weak Pokemon, or it can knock out the Dene, so it's at least usable. Brightwing and then Fast Flight is pretty solid. So Talonflame V, I think, gets a B. So far these tiers are actually very like discernible from each other. Like, these are just unplayable, these are like fun tier, maybe rogue, these are like getting into the, yeah, these will be seen in a little bit of competitive decks. So like, this is the playable. So these tiers are very good so far. Then we've got Zarude V. 210 HP, bind down to do 50, and then they can't retreat next turn. And it has the Jungle Rising attack 100. You may attach up to 2 basic energy cards from your hand to your bench Pokemon in any way you like. If you attach energy to a Pokemon in this way, heal all damage from this Pokemon. So this card's really good. It's not incredibly powerful compared to our standard format, but it is a very good card intrinsically. So you can attach any 2 basic energy, not just grass. It's usually going to be grass, but just in case. It could be any kind of basic energy to your benched Pokemon, and then each benched Pokemon you attach energy to in this way gets completely healed. So I did make a deck profile on this channel using Zarude V for an Eggroll deck, or a Rillaboom box deck, I guess you would call it, that I'll definitely try out once Vivid Voltage actually comes onto ptcgo. But I do think Zarude V has playability, and while it's probably overwhelmed by just the sheer power of the current standard format, I do think it has playability. So next, so that's all the V Pokemon. You'll notice none of these V Pokemon are going to be changing the format. None of them even touched A tier. And sadly, I don't think the VMAX Pokemon are like making huge changes to the format. But you have to remember, card game expansions, it's good sometimes when a card game expansion doesn't completely change the standard format, because it's supposed to be an expansion to the set. It's an add-on. It's an expansion to the game. It's an add-on to the game. It's an add-on to the standard format you were already playing. Sometimes it'll feel like a completely different game when like Unbroken Bonds, when Reshizard came into the game and Evilax came into the game and Welder, and it felt completely different. And then Unified Minds, when Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team came into the game, and it felt very different. It doesn't always have to be like that. The game can just have some slight adjustments, and the set can add some nice touches to the format that was already there. And I think this set is underappreciated just because it doesn't have huge waves of change coming with it. That being said, let's get into the Vmax'S. We'll just stick with the rainbow since they're all in a clump. So first we're looking at togekiss Vmax, 310 HP. And it has 1 attack. So something I just dislike about 4 out of 6 of these Vmax'S is they're just so plain. But sticking to competitive viability and not design flaws or design flaws. It has 1 attack, max glide 120. You may search your deck for up to 2 cards and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So Togekiss has free retreat, which is very nice. It has resistance to fighting, and fighting is a little bit of a pushed type in this set, so that's nice. It is weak to lightning. Lightning is also a little bit of a pushed set in this type in this set, because the big old Pikachu has is lightning, and that is one of the new Vmax'S as well. But Pika is still very popular, at least prior to this set. We'll have to see what happens, but I imagine it will at least still be played once Vivid Voltage comes out. So lightning has not been a good weakness to have in, like, I don't know, since Pika came out, basically. Max Glide doesn't do a lot of damage. Now, here's an issue. Vmax'S have been following a formula where they can 2-shot other Vmax'S, and a fair majority of Vmax'S can 1-shot Vs. And that's kind of the formula that the successful Vmax'S have followed. The one that didn't follow that is Dragapult Vmax, and I think that's because Dragapult Vmax was good before other Vmax'S were good, and it was playing against a Jirachi-ridden format where people weren't taking the Jirachis out of their decks at first because they didn't know they had to beat Dragapult. The Dene's everywhere, but basic Pokemon, the Dragapult was 2-shotting while cleaning up something on the bench. But typically what we've seen is the Vmax'S that do well, Eternatus, 1-shots Vs, 1-shots tag teams, 2-shots Vmax'S. Scorch can 1-shot anything, but typically it'll 2-shot Vmax'S, 2-shot tag teams, 1-shot Vs. So when looking at Togekiss Max Glide, that has to 3-shot other Vmax'S. Now you would think you may search your deck for up to 2 cards and put them into your hands. Okay, so you were probably playing a control-ish type variant with Togekiss Vmax, or a healing variant where we're trying to keep Togekiss alive. But we don't have like another attack to use if we need to do more damage or snipe the bench. And Togekiss isn't even that bulky at 310. I know, unfortunately not that bulky at 310. So you might not even be able to, like, tank hits to then heal. I don't think this format really caters to control archetypes at the moment, so there's not a ton of options to get with those two cards. And of course we have Reset Stamp and we have Marnie in the format, so it's kind of hard to build a deck around something like this. So Togekiss VMAX is not completely poopy tier. I think it's C tier in the current standard format, but I do think it could maybe have its day sometime later down the line. Next we have Aegis slash VMAX with max hack, so 160 plus 30 more for each prize card you have taken. So if you've taken 4 prize cards, that does 280 damage to knock out a tag team. If you've taken 5 prize cards, you can knock out the VMAX in the active, so it does a good bit of damage. Now Aegis slash VMAX, I would say probably like C tier, but Aegis slash V, which we did not look at because we were only looking at Vs which do not have a VMAX in the set. Aegis slash is going to be a really good card to have around in Luca Metal and ADPZ when things like Decigoons and Altaria are in the format, because Sonic Edge can hit through any effect. Now if you're putting in this one tech, some people would argue that maybe you just throw in Aegis slash and now you have a VMAX attacker in ADPZ and Luca Metal if you want a bulkier attacker that can sit out there and tank a hit and force your opponent to have Gust to get around you to win. Aegis slash might be that card that you want to allocate a slot for. So because of Aegis slash V's playability, and you could just kind of toss one of the VMAX into a deck that you already have Aegis slash V in, I'm going to put Aegis slash VMAX into the B tier. So this is something that, like, if you ended up skipping through the video to see the end of the tier list and come back to watch this to find out my reasoning, these two cards like Aegis slash VMAX might not look that much better than Togekiss in a vacuum, and I think you'd be right. Like, Togekiss VMAX looks like a more powerfully designed card than Aegis slash Togekiss VMAX looks like a more powerfully designed card, I think, than Aegis slash VMAX. But because Togekiss is not positioned to do well in the current standard format, and Aegis slash VMAX has the V that's going to be played, you can just splash it in. I think Aegis slash VMAX is somewhat competitively viable in the standard format, which is why it's in B. B is kind of like somewhat competitively viable. Next, we've got Coalossal VMAX, which is one that I've been very excited about. So Coalossal VMAX has 330 HP, fighting type. Now I do want to say real quick that a lot of times when I do these tier lists, I'll rate the cards based on how they look in a vacuum, like their design, how the card looks like on kind of first impression, not taking into account the other cards around. But since we're talking about in current standard format, Coalossal VMAX is going to be relevant, it's going to be competitive, and partially due to the support that it has for being fighting type. But Coalossal VMAX, and I said this in my Patreon article, Coalossal VMAX, every single attribute about this card is pushing it into viability. So its type is fighting, and fighting has a good amount of support right now, and fighting hits Dark and Lightning for weakness. So it hits Pikarom, it hits Pikachu VMAX, it hits Eternatus, all for weakness. That is really good. Even its Eruption Shot does 130, that doesn't knock out a Dedenne. Dedenne is weak to fighting, it knocks out that. Crobat V is weak to fighting, it knocks out that. So off the bat, we have fighting type on a VMAX, very strong. Next we have 330 HP, so that's a lot of HP. Eternatus is typically not reaching up to that for a one-shot. Centiscourge VMAX is typically not reaching up to that for a one-shot. Zamazenta has to four-shot it. Zamazenta has to four-shot it. That's if you did not heal it at all. Of course, we're not going to be able to hit Zamazenta with a Coalossal VMAX, but I digress. So there it is. The fighting type is really good. It has Stone Energy Dojo. B, if you want to play that from the new set, has Surfetched as a fighting backup attacker. Stone Energy from the new set. karate belt. And then the HP, 330 HP, very high. So we've just touched the top right corner of the card, and it's already giving us reason to think it could be viable. Eruption Shot for 1 fighting energy does 40 damage plus 90 more. So you discard the top card of your deck, and if that card is an energy card, this attack does 90 more, and you attach that card. So for 1 energy, you're doing 130 minimum, you know, prior to weaknesses or martial arts dojo. And you're accelerating an energy, any energy, including special energy, including stone energy. If you do not know, stone energy comes out in this set, and when it is attached to a fighting Pokemon, the fighting Pokemon this card is attached to takes 20 less damage from attacks. So you can accelerate any kind of energy onto it with Eruption Shot. That's good. And then Vmax Boulder does 240. So that's knocking out most V Pokemon without damage modifiers. It's knocking out some tag teams such as Pikachu and Raichu. It's knocking out Vmax'S that are weak to fighting. It knocks out Eternatus Vmax, and it cleans up like all just regular GX Pokemon that might be around, or any V Pokemon, but I think I said V Pokemon already. And then even from there on, we have more. It's weak to grass, which grass is not the best, but not the worst weakness to have. If you had to choose a weakness right now, I'm not even sure what you would pick. But grass is not the worst. So we do have Orbeetle coming out in this set. The good thing is Coalossal VMAX has a colorless cost in Gmax Boulder, so you could use weakness guard energy, and also Eruption Shot could just accelerate a weakness guard from the top of the deck onto your Coalossal VMAX to protect it. So if grass ends up being an archetype that's around a bit, like you expect to run into it, and you test out weakness guard and it fixes up the matchup, then weakness guard actually goes into Coalossal VMAX decks pretty well. So I think Coalossal VMAX is going to be a competitive card, and it's going to be our first card in the A tier for all of those reasons that I mentioned. Oh, did we mention... We didn't mention retreat cost. Because it has 4 retreat cost, it can use buff padding to make it have 380 HP. So there you go. Next, we've got Pikachu Vmax. So Pikachu Vmax, 310 HP. Only 1 attack. It's very linear. So Gmax Volt Tackle for Lightning does 120. If you discard all energy attached to the Pokemon, gosh, excuse me, this attack does 150 more damage, so it'll do 270 for 3 energy. 270 is a fair amount of damage for a VMAX Pokemon, and I am scrolling to get to the Electrode. You can knock out this Electrode to search your deck for 2 lightning energy, attach them to Pikachu VMAX. So if you're using the Electrode engine with this, you might actually be getting turn 2 attack off with Gmax Volt Tackle more often than you get a turn 2 full blitz off with the current Pikarom decks, because with the current Pikarom deck you have to either go second get Bolt Ton and use full Bolt, I don't even know what Bolt Ton's first attack is, and use Bolt Ton's first attack, or you have to, you know, if you go first on turn 2, you can get Cocoa Prism, get a lightning energy into the discard, bada bing bada boom, and you full blitz. With Pikachu VMAX, of course, you're getting 2 stage 1s into play, essentially Pikachu VMAX and the Electrode, but the Electrode actually searches the energy out of the deck, which is pretty nice. I could see, I fully expect there to be kind of hybrid decks that run the new Electrode and the Pikachu VMAX and Pikarom and Bolt Ton. You know, they just throw all the lightning stuff into one deck. The problem is you're playing a toolbox of all kinds of different attackers that are doing different things, and they're all weak to one typing. So that's not good, but I think Pikachu VMAX does enough and has enough support. It doesn't have as much support as it does in Japan, though, because we don't have Electro Power and Thunder Mountain. So Pikachu VMAX, we're going to say that's a B tier card. We got Galarian Darmanitan next. So Galarian Darmanitan, very cool looking Pokemon, and I do like damage spread, like I said, but being at only one attack, not a lot to do with the card. So 320 HP, max whiteout for 4 water, you do 200, then 30 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So the thing with this is everybody knows what we're going to do with this. We're going to slap some energy onto this with Frostmoth. We're going to attach telescopic scope, so it does 30 more damage to your opponent's benched V and benched GX Pokemon. We're going to do 200 active, 60 to the bench. That gets knocked out because, you know, we're 320 HP with a metal weakness, so our opponent's going to kill us. And then we're going to slap some energy to an Alolan Sand slash GX, and then we're going to use its GX attack and hopefully blow up our opponent's board. Now, the flaw with this is the opponent could just put a Mew in their deck. If this deck became at all viable and the opponent plays a Mew, then the whole thing's over. The other thing is, well, there's multiple caveats to this. So, like, you need multiple stage 1s, you need a lot of energy in hand, you need your opponent not to play Mew. If they're playing Metal, then you get your VMAX one-shotted. What else? Oh, they could just not play a lot of Pokemon down. So then that begs the question, do we need to play Mawile GX in this deck to try to rip Pokemon out of our opponent's hand and put them onto the board? Because they could just not fill up their bench if they know they're playing against a Galarian Darmanitan deck. They could just play a couple Pokemon and then you hit them and then they play more. They could just stagger when they bench. So Galarian Darmanitan has a lot of hoops to jump through. And unfortunately, I don't think it's much better than Togekiss, and I don't think it's as good as these Pokemon up here. So I guess we'll put this in order and we'll do this. I think Galarian Darmanitan's unfortunately C tier, but of course I'm still going to try to make it work in a deck. I think Vivid Voltage is the kind of set where it's going to age better and the cards aren't going to be very competitive right off the bat. It's also a beautiful set for collecting. I think a lot of people are hype into Pokemon right now anyway, so a beautiful collector set like this is great right about now. But it also has a ton of stuff that's fun to play when we don't have a real competitive season going on. So the last VMAX we'll look at here is Orbeetle VMAX with 310 HP. It has an ability and an attack, so we're not just, you know, putting theme deck Pokemon on our VMAXs at this point. So the ability Eerie Beam, once during your turn, if its Pokemon is in the active spot, you may put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's Pokemon. This is a beautiful ability. It's different than Sand Slammer and different from Wheezing from Unbroken Bond's ability, because it's you choose when it happens and you can retreat to another Orbeetle VMAX and do it again. It's not an in-between turns kind of thing. So very nice. And then Gmax Wave, I think, is underrated. I was listening to another content creator's set review or VMAX review or something, and I think it was the first time I heard somebody talk highly about the Gmax Wave attack, but I could just be missing other people talking like good about it. But Gmax Wave does 50 plus 50 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So if they have 2 energy attached, you're doing 150, and you also have Eerie Beam to take into account, so you're probably 2-shotting whatever it is. And then if they have 3 energy, you're doing 200, which is a good amount of damage. And again, with Eerie Beam, you can even be essentially 1-shotting or like with 1 attack knocking out some V Pokemon. The big issue I see there is Zacian V is resistant to metal, and I think that might be the biggest thing holding this card back, since, you know, Zacian decks are very, very strong. But I do really like this card. I can't, however, say that I think it's worlds better than these cards. I also don't know that I think it's worse than Coalossal, so I'm going to be generous to Orbeetle VMAX and put it in. Am I? Because, see, Coalossal, I can say, yeah, this should probably be a tier 2 deck, but Orbeetle, I can't. So I think Orbeetle will see some play, and that's what the B tier is, somewhat playable stuff down here. Coalossal, I'd be very surprised if it didn't see some play. This stuff probably won't be successful, but will be played, will have a tiny bit of, you know, rogue population, and then these cards are just completely like unplayable. Like these cards are gonna end up on deck roulette, and I'll be forced to play them. So yeah, this is my tier list of all of the VMAXs and the Vs that do not have VMAX evolutions in Vivid Voltage. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Of course, shout out to my sponsor, PotownStore.com, the best place for you to get ptcgo codes. Use code Celio for 5% off. Be sure to leave a thumbs up on this video if you enjoyed it, and let me know where your tier list would differ from mine for these VMAX and these V Pokemon. I hope you're just as excited as I am for Vivid Voltage, because I truly am excited for this set. It's like I've said a million times, it's a beautiful looking set. There's a lot of cool cards, especially with the amazing rares, with Orbital VMAX, with Coalossal VMAX, and Stone Energy coming out. So I am very, very excited to play with this set, even though it's not going to change up the competitive world too much. I think it will be a very fun set to collect and play with. So thank you for watching this video. I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.